Hello, book lovers! I'm Rachel Barenbaum, author of the novel Atomic Anna. You're listening to Check This Out from New Hampshire Public Radio and the Penn Faulkner Foundation. I write novels, and on this show, I get to do one of my favorite things in the world, talk to other writers about their brand new books. And if you're like me, and you get tired of seeing the same titles on every bestseller list, you are in the right place. Because on this show, you'll hear from authors who aren't famous yet, but probably will be. Remember, you heard them here first. Today, Yu-Mei, Balasingamchow, and her debut novel, Names Have Been Changed. I love this book. It is wild. It's filled with danger and twists. It's about immigration, Singapore, and podcasting. Yes, podcasting. Later in the hour, on our Book Biz segment, we'll also talk to Katherine Center, who's been traditionally publishing since 2007. I'm a huge fan, and we're going to talk to her about her newest book, The Shippers, but also how much things have changed for traditional authors in the past 20 years. We're going to start with Yu-Mei Balasingamchow, author of Names Have Been Changed. Yu-Mei, I am so excited to have you on this show for your debut. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I am also very excited. I've been listening to your podcast for, the last couple of years, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me, and thanks for reading my book.
I'm so excited. So we actually met at a writer's residency right when I got the green light for this show, just as NHPR was bringing me on. And I remember talking to you about being so nervous that I was actually going to be on NHPR and you calming me down and telling me about this beautiful book. So it's amazing to be here now. Congratulations.
Full circle. Thank you.
We've both come a long way, and I'm super excited to talk to you about Names Have Been Changed. So set it up for us. Tell us what the book is about.
So the book is about a woman who calls herself Ophir, but doesn't actually tell you her real name and refuses to because she's a criminal on the run. She committed a crime in Singapore some time ago, fled the country without really thinking through the consequences, and wound up an accidental fugitive. And by the time the book begins, she's been on the run for about 10 years. She's kind of sick of it. She's really not feeling her best because it's also a pandemic lockdown, and she recently found out her father passed away. She's a mess. And she decides, you know what I'm going to do? If I start a podcast, I can tell everyone, clear the air, and nobody will know where I am. And so she goes for it. The book is her, the first page of the book is episode 1, and she begins telling you her story. And we follow her through every week. She has a new episode. She's telling you a bit more of the story. She takes you around the world. And our only access to her is through what she tells us. It's very direct. It is like, first person narration, but also like it's coming to us like live on the airwaves, as it were, on the internet.
But so from page 1, we know that it's a podcast, it's a performance. And the woman says, my name is, well, I'm not even going to tell you, but call me Ophir, right? And all the names have been changed in every, story that she tells. And so I felt like right from page 1, she's like, so I'm a completely unreliable narrator. Like, don't believe anything I'm saying, but believe me. Let's talk about that setup.
I think she thinks she's a reliable narrator. She's kind of entering into this podcast adventure because she really just needs to talk to someone. She's feeling really isolated and upset. And also I think subconsciously, she's like, all this stuff has been going on. I've been running and running for 10 years. I've never really stopped to think through what it is I've done. And now I can have this opportunity. In some ways, it's a very controllable format. She gets to stop talking whenever she wants to. And there are times in the middle of an account when she's like, I got to stop here. I got to take a break. Like, it's too much, and then she walks away and comes back later and continues the story when she's ready. So it feels like she has control. And I think she goes into it with good intentions because she does tell us at the beginning, like, okay, there's some things I'm not going to tell you, for instance, because they are boring. There's stretches of my life when I didn't do very much. But she really does sort of unravel all the details. I mean, like, even at the beginning, like, why did I run away from Singapore? She kind of walks us through the day when everything went down. Um, and she's like grasping for as many details as she can because she knows now it was a pivotal moment. But at the instant, she was just like, oh no, the police are on my heels. I gotta run. And then she starts running almost without thinking about it. She doesn't have time to stop and reflect. So I think that motivates her. It's very human, like
Yes, it's human and it's so real because right, there's everything in life like, you don't know this is a big moment. Rarely do you know this is a big
Mhm.
moment, and it's only in looking back, and that's what Ophir shows us. Her voice, your voice, is really what carries the book too, like, you're so funny. It's hilarious, and, let's share it with our listeners. Can you read for us the very opening of the book? Introduce us to your debut novel, Names Have Been Changed.
Okay, I will. I will read the opening. Awesome. Names have been changed. Episode 1, April 17, 2020. Did you know that the Singapore passport is one of the most coveted in the world? It can get you into 190 countries without a visa. And a forged passport, not a counterfeit. I'm talking about an original with only the name and photograph tampered with. That goes for a pretty penny on the international black market. Impressive, isn't it? For a place so small, most people can't even find it on a map. I used to have one. The real deal, the genuine article. The palm sized, bright red, gold stamped, fake leather feeling book of dreams, tricked out with the latest security features. Biometric chips, embossed design, diffractive effects, embedded laser images. All the bells and whistles they could pack into it. That was almost 10 years ago, before I left Singapore forever, although I didn't realize it at the time. My friend Tina says there are newer versions now, with more high tech wizardry. I haven't seen one, I wouldn't know. I sold mine in Bangkok for $3,000 and a discount on a forged Hong Kong passport. Later, I learned that I should have asked for more, a hell of a lot more. But the important thing was, I didn't let on that my shiny red book was on an Interpol watch list because I was running away with a bag full of money that didn't belong to me. I took my new identity, bought a flight to Tokyo in the name of Kara Wong, and didn't look back.
That was Yu-Mei Balasingamchow reading from her brand new debut, Names Have Been Changed, and right from the beginning, I am completely hooked. I am in. I wanna know more. And I'm also thinking in the back of my head, this is a woman broadcasting. She's doing a podcast. She's talking to me. She says her name is Ophir, but is this Yu-Mei? Is this you? I mean, I have to ask this.
You're not the first person to ask. And the truth is, my life is very uninteresting, and I have not done as any of the things that Ophir has done. I like the idea that people think I have, but really, I no.
I mean, you write her so vividly that I feel like she is alive and on the like, not just on the page, like, Ophir exists for me. She is out there. So let's talk about her. When we meet her, she's on the run. She's on the Interpol watch list or wanted list, and she has just stolen a bag of money. Set her up for us. Tell us about her situation.
Yeah, so 10 years ago or more, she's been actually involved in a little bit of a criminal scheme that her best friend pulled her into to earn some extra cash. And Ophia was the kind of person that didn't really think through about, consequences. She's just like, oh, this sounds good. Let's do it. Some extra cash. Who wouldn't want that? And I think that comes from the fact that she's the youngest of 6 children. She grew up in a loving family, but she's also like not remarkable. Like some of her siblings have like successful jobs and careers. She does not. And she carries with her this sort of psychic wound of the fact that her mother died giving birth to her. And so, even though obviously her family does not blame her for that, she feels like, oh, if not for me, my siblings would have their mother and my father would have his wife. And that kind of haunts her throughout her life. So she feels like she belongs and also like she doesn't all at once. And then she gets, mixed up in this crime because it just seems cool. And she likes to buy nice things for herself. Um, and one day when she finds out that the police are catching up to them, she panics and runs without thinking. Is like running to the ATM, getting all her cash out, rushing home, packing a bag really quick, dashing across the border. She gets into Malaysia and she's like, "No, I got to keep running." And she gets on a plane. She goes to Thailand. She keeps trying to put this distance between her and the problem, thinking that everything will die down. And of course, it becomes clear to her very soon after that no, now she's actually become an international criminal fugitive.
Let's talk about her crime. She's a money mule. So, like, what did she actually do?
She received instructions from someone who would put some money into her account and then sometime later, a week or two later, be like, okay, so you know that 10,000 I gave you? Transfer 9,000 to this other account and you can keep the rest for yourself, like a little tip for what you've done. And so she's helping someone whom she doesn't really know very well move money around. And surprise, surprise, it turns out that this is a criminal syndicate which is doing this on enormous scale with millions of dollars, and that is a very bad thing. It's money laundering basically at this level, but she's just like a tiny piece of the puzzle.
If you're just joining us, I'm Rachel Barenbaum. My guest today is Yu-Mei Balasingamchow, and we are talking about her brand new debut novel, Names Have Been Changed. It's unlike anything you've read. It's filled with danger and twists. It's about immigration, Singapore, and podcasting. Yes, podcasting. And we are talking about Ophir, the main character, the unreliable narrator who is podcasting and telling us all about her life. She is on the run because she's stolen $60,000 and she has no idea what it's for, where it's going, what it's from. She doesn't ask any questions. She just knows money goes in, she takes it out, and then she loves clothes and she's very shallow in many ways. She wants, clothes, restaurants, clubs, drugs, but she's so deep. And I think that's what makes her work. There's a depth to her, but she doesn't even want to recognize it. I think that's what made her so compelling to me.
I think a lot of the time we don't examine ourselves till we're sort of put under pressure and forced to re-examine it. And then we realize, oh, maybe that thing has been, haunting me all along. Other times it could be that you have to actually say it out loud and someone else points it out to you. Which I think goes back to your question about like how reliable of a narrator is she? She believes she is. She's telling you these things, but I think as the listener of her podcast or the reader of the book, that we can put together things where like, oh, you're telling yourself this about yourself, but you haven't realized, also that you put it on about yourself. I mean, there's a scene later in the novel where Ophir is once again belaboring the fact that her mother died giving birth to her, and someone else is like pointing out, like, we never blamed you for it. We're not bringing it out. You're the only one, and it's kind of um, a flash of temporary insight that Ophir realizes it. Although it remains to be seen if she will actually like internalize it and believe it about herself.
And the main premise is that Ophir, the main character, is on the run. She's an internationally wanted criminal. She's on the Interpol most wanted list, and she has stolen $60,000. She's given up everything so that she can stay out of jail and keep the $60,000. And like, is $60,000 a number that would motivate you? And it's crazy to me how different the answers are to that. Like, what is your number that would make you leave everything? Like your parents, your sisters, your brothers, everything. Let's talk about that. What is that number and why does it matter? Like, why do we keep having this conversation?
Partly irrational. Like it's not in Ophir's case, it's not a big enough sum like millions and millions of dollars that she could set herself up somewhere. But it's also big enough that you're like, okay, I might be all right for a while. Her initial thought is, I'm just gonna lie low. This will blow over, and I'll go home. And so the 60,000 is just right. Like I can stretch it out if I need to. And it's the fact that her crimes are compounded by running away that's what really gets her into the deep end. Um, and of course, by the time we meet her 10 years later, that money is long gone. She's had to figure out many other ways of earning her way in the world so that she can get fed and sleep in at least a relatively safe place. And so I think in for her the sum of money, the 60,000 is almost like ironic. Like, really, you just did it for that? And of course, it's not really just about the money. It's also about the fear that was driving her, and the sense of losing control. Like everything in her life was in place, and then suddenly, like someone was going to pull the rug out under her, and that is too frightening to contemplate.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the fears, of course, is going to jail. And it turns out that the friend that pulled her into this whole scheme gets a 3-year jail sentence. So basically, she gets away, she keeps $60,000, and she's running from a 3-year jail sentence. So if Ophir turns herself in, let's say that's the max she would get, 3 to 5 years, like, is that worth giving up everything in your life? That's also a huge question. Like, would I rather serve the 3 to 5 years that I might get or 3 years? I don't know what that number is and get my family back, my name back, my country back, or stay on the run and have, just be completely isolated and on my own. Like, how did you think about that equation too?
It's another case of like not realizing how much worse it gets the further you stay away. That everything intensifies, your own isolation intensifies, and also the sort of culpability of what you've done becomes worse. I do think she's driven by a very visceral, almost ununderstandable fear of being enclosed, imprisoned, unable to, be herself. Unwittingly, she traps herself in a similar situation. Like she can't really be herself when she's on the run. She has to conceal her name, her identity, her voice. But somehow the idea, like when the day that she runs, she imagines, her friend being arrested, maybe being in jail, and then she stops thinking. I can't think about that because if I do, I'm gonna start losing my mind. I've got to focus on keeping myself safe. And she like forces her mind onto a different trajectory and just keeps going that way. Doesn't look back.
Yeah, but the one freedom that she does have is she is queer, and so she loves women, although she's sometimes with men too. That's part of what I absolutely loved about her, by the way, is she's like, "I love whoever looks good tonight. I wanna be with whoever's beautiful in the moment because I am beautiful." That was sort of her attitude.
Or sometimes like they don't even have to be beautiful. It's just like, yeah, you seem fine for tonight, and I'm a little lonely and itchy, and let's just do it. Let's get on with it. And she doesn't look back at that.
Right, and what an open, free character, like, I love that about her. But let's dig into Singapore, because Singapore is where it starts, and it's really a character unto itself in this whole book. You are from Singapore, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
This book to me read like sort of a primer on Singapore in so many ways. Could you read for us to show us a little bit of that?
Okay. So the bit I'm going to read is takes place in Tokyo, and at this point, Ophir has been on the run for about 6 months or so, and she's still getting the hang of it. And she's about to tell us the first time she met a Singaporean while she was overseas. I was in the midst of getting ready, half naked and still groggy from the previous night's drinking, when I met Gigi. The first thing I saw was her boobs. She was taller than me, quite statuesque actually for an Asian woman, about the same height as the Russians and Ukrainians. The skin was almost as brown as mine, so I guessed she was Filipino. As I was struggling into my frou-frou outfit for the night, we got squeezed up against each other. Do you need help with the zipper? Right away, I knew she was Singaporean. Can you hear it? Do you need help with the zipper? It's not American, British, or Australian, no rolled R's or exaggerated vowels. Most Asian people who speak English don't sound like that. A certain kind of educated Singaporean, though, they can do a bland, neutral kind of English, almost accentless. That's what Gigi had. I responded with one of the safest words you can say in English without giving away an accent. Okay. She helped me with the dress and asked what I was doing in Tokyo. I told her the story I'd given Cosette. I was from Hong Kong. I needed to make some money before I went home. Gigi said, I'm from Singapore. I said, oh, I lived there when I was a child. That would be enough to explain why I understood Singlish if Gigi used it. When I heard Gigi speak, I knew the biggest risk was that I would respond with my real voice, not only saying yeah instead of yes, but full on with a sentence that only a Singaporean would say. Let me think of an example. Okay, here's one. How come it happened like that? It makes me sentimental to hear that part of myself. One more time. How come it happened like that?
That was Yu-Mei Balasingamchow reading from her debut novel, Names Have Been Changed. That is Ophir in a nutshell. She's so funny, right? The first thing I noticed about Gigi was her boobs.
I
Like,
mean, she's eye level. She notices things.
yes. But here she is giving a totally fake name, right? She's trying to figure out a new job. And there's actually, again, what makes this so powerful is there's a whole other level to this, which is how do I hide in plain sight here? How do I cover up my roots, right? Make sure that she doesn't even know I'm from Singapore. Like that depth is what makes her so interesting. So, how do you even get into a scene like that? Like, how did you put yourself there?
I think that the yearning she feels when she hears the Singlish and the Singapore accent is something that I have felt because, I mean, Singapore's a tiny country. There are not that many Singaporeans, and you don't encounter them everywhere. I mean, there's certain sort of enclaves around the world, but otherwise it's pretty scattered. And so when it catches you by surprise, that is really the moment that you're kind of like, the sound seizes your heart. You're like, someone from home, even though I have no idea who this person is, or even if I like them. So that's me for sure, the author. Um, and then transposing it into Ophir, who's been on the run, misses home, has no idea what she's like. Am I going to just keep doing this? What for how long? And then she hears this tantalizing voice in the place where she's working, and she thinks, "Oh my goodness, it's it both warms her heart, but she's like, it's also potentially a trap. I might give myself away, and then the game is up. So the tension underlying, like if I hear another Singaporean advice, I will go up to them and talk to them, and it's fine. I don't need to repress it in my case. I can be very open. But Ophir can't. All the moment she hears it, it's like her extra defenses go up. Like, don't give away. You're from Hong Kong. This is your backstory. Stick with it.
And the fact that she's from Singapore, but she hides it for the entire book means that she is hiding. And in a sense, she loses herself because who is she if she has to give that part up?
I think when Ophir starts out concealing her identity, it just seems practical. This is what I have to do, and I have to change my voice. Perfectly logical. But over time, months and months, and then years, it takes this emotional toll that she wasn't anticipating. It makes her all the more homesick that she can't even speak in what she calls her natural voice to someone who will understand it. When she's talking on the podcast, she at some points she does lapse into Singlish or she reaches for a certain phrase. But she says to the listeners, like, if I continue that way, you won't understand me. Because she knows that most people out there wouldn't, immediately connect with the accent or be able to follow. And so she chooses to withdraw to some kind of more neutral English for her account, which is still truthful, but it's also not fully of the heart. And I think like you asked me why a podcast at the beginning, and the potential of someone talking to you directly is that, like the intimacy of thought and voice, right? You think it, you say it, and then you hear yourself saying it, and how that makes you feel and how that sort of changes you in the moment. I think that was fun to explore in the book, having a few just keep talking for pages and pages.
So she can sort of lose herself, and that's sort of the point. But I kept asking, like, why doesn't she just go home at this point? Because she emails her brother periodically, basically when she's moving to country. She creates an email address and then sends a little note coded so that he knows it's from her, and then she, like, never logs back in. So she wants to go home in some ways. It's like, why didn't she go home?
I don't know if she would say this, but home is clearly a very fraught place for her. It's where she belongs. She grew up there. She speaks English. She knows how to order coffee from the favorite coffee uncle. But it's also the place where she feels judged. First, because of her family and her own sense of guilt that, oh, I killed my mother and therefore I kind of wrecked my family. And then also now she's an actual wanted criminal. And so I think she's torn between these two poles, and she's so afraid of the judgment that she never quite brings herself to take that step back towards home. She always keeps pushing herself further and further away. That seems like the easier option in some ways.
As we have this conversation and we keep talking about Ophir as this wanted criminal, I keep like it is I'm realizing how crazy it is that she's a wanted criminal for stealing $60,000. And her entire life is upside down, and she's so dramatic in the sense of everything needs to change in the world, like nothing can be the same. And yes, she broke the law, but we're not talking about a Hollywood style, like, $100 million heist. We're talking about all of this hinges on a $60,000 theft, being a money mule. Like, that's crazy, right?
Crazier things happen in real life. I mean, I did look up, Interpol watch lists and things like that, and you'd be surprised that sometimes the things that people do, you know, intentionally or moment of lapse of judgment, and then it kind of haunts you, and whether whether you can find a way to clear your name or not, or to do the time, as the case may be.
And usually we think about immigration or moving to new countries as freedom, or, right, evading jail as freedom. But I actually think that she is caught and has no freedom at all as she's on the run. Like, it's almost worse than just facing it and going to jail. How did you think about that?
Ophir trades one kind of freedom for another apparent kind of freedom without really thinking about it. And so she goes from, being just an ordinary citizen without a criminal record, to one who is haunted and chased by being a internationally wanted criminal, and apparently can kind of move around the world quite easily in some ways with her fake passports and hiding in places where people probably wouldn't look for her. But on the other hand, she is, yeah, in something of a prison of her own making, as you were saying, because she can no longer use her real name, speak with her real voice, tell people who she really is, and she finds it really hard to trust people. Her guard is almost always up in every situation.
I think that's so insightful, and that's exactly right. And it brings me directly to my next question, which is, can we ever truly start over?
I think we like to tell ourselves we can because it gives us hope. Hope that you can wipe your slate clean or at least like put pause on whatever timeline you're on and switch to a different one. It's a very tempting idea. Um, we like to play act different people, different possibilities. If only I had made that decision, something would have been different. Ophir asks herself that over and over again. Not only like if I hadn't run away, but even when she meets certain people, like, oh, if I had told that person my real identity sooner, maybe we would still be friends. It just gives us the boost to maybe make a break that we need to with the past sometimes as well. Like we recognize that something is maybe not altogether healthy for us or that we've outgrown the place. There's another character, Izati, who talks about she's a Singaporean who's been living in the US for several decades, like a conventional immigrant in some ways. And she feels like she's outgrown what Singapore was for her. And so even though she doesn't hate it or dislike it, but she has no interest in going back. And
If you're just joining us, I'm Rachel Barenbaum. You're listening to Check This Out from New Hampshire Public Radio. And my guest today is Yu-Mei Balasingamchow. We are talking about her brand new debut novel, Names Have Been Changed. In this novel, there's a lot of code switching, performing identity, accents. The main character, Ophir, is even a voice actor. Yu-Mei, have you ever felt like a different person in other languages? Like, is that how you dug into this idea, or what is your experience with that?
I think we are different people when we switch languages. Partly it's just the languages sometimes are not completely translatable. You can say things like, I speak Mandarin as well as English, and then I speak Singlish, which is a Creole language of Singapore. And there are things you can say in each language that don't quite fully translate. And so, in terms of like the fullness of expression that you can give an idea, sometimes, like Ophia does it, she sometimes reaches for a word that is Malay or Singlish because that's actually what she's trying to say. And if you understood it, you can kind of translate it, but if you understood the original, you would have a fuller appreciation of what she's feeling at that moment.
You know, I've been so impressed with you over the years watching this book, Names Have Been Changed, come together because you have been willing to go back again and again and change it and tinker it to make it the best book it can. And I think that writers also need to realize, like, just because you think this is the best thing that you could do at this moment doesn't mean you can't do better, right? And you can't go back. Because I see you living that as you've gone through all the different drafts of this book, Names Have Been Changed.
Yeah, I think the thing I learned about myself from writing this was learning not to be afraid of revision. Because I used to be the kind of writer that was like, oh no, I've painstakingly put this draft together. How could I possibly break it apart? I don't know how to re-see it and make it better. But I think with names have been changed. Partly I gave myself breaks in between drafts and also got feedback from friends, which was super helpful. And then just time. Sometimes you just need time away. You come back and suddenly you can see, and then you can see how you can make it better. Like, oh, this scene with the best friend when she first draws her into the scheme. I can make this a much more funny and, action-packed scene than it is right now, and that's gonna draw the reader in better, so let's go for it. And then you're excited because, you're still being true to your vision, but you're gonna give a better version of itself.
Yu-Mei Balasingamchow, thank you so much for joining me here today on Check This Out.
Thanks so much for having me, Rachel. It was a blast talking to you.
I'm Rachel Barenbaum. You're listening to Check This Out from New Hampshire Public Radio. Next up is the Book Biz. This is where we look at the forces shaping what gets written, published, and read. We're going to talk to Katherine Center, a veteran author, about how the industry has changed over the last 20 years. Katherine, welcome to Check This Out. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I'm an absolutely humongous fan, and I'm going to try to be cool as we have this conversation.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for letting me come and chat with you.
Right now, I just want to note that you are on book tour because your newest book, The Shippers, just came out, and we're going to get to it. We're going to talk all about it. But I want to start off by recognizing that you've been in publishing for a pretty long time at this point, since about 2007, and so much has changed in the business. I mean, we have Kindle, social media, book talk, audiobooks, special editions, like lots of other things changing. Can you just talk about your thoughts on the changing industry since you've started? Like, has it become easier or harder for you as an author?
Yeah, it's been 19 years since my first book came out, which is shocking to me. I just noticed that recently. So it's been a while. And when I first started, the main way that folks got the word out about books was newspapers, like old school newspapers. And that has changed a lot. I mean, that is no longer the way people get the word out about books. And I think in some ways that's been really beneficial for me and beneficial for romance in general, because the newspapers of old had certain gatekeepers. They were the people running those review departments who were not necessarily interested in or reading romance. And now it's really much more of a people read a book, they love it, they go make a TikTok about it or an Instagram about it. And so it's much more like friends telling their friends what to read, which is much more organic in a lot of ways.
But when you started, you were publishing books that were not called romance, right? They were labeled fiction. And there were love stories in those, right? And now your books are clearly labeled romance. So let's talk about that transition for you.
Yeah, so when I first got started, there was no category for the kind of books that I write. There was sort of traditional romance, like you might find in the grocery store, like in little mass market paperbacks. And then there was, literary fiction. And the category that I wound up in was, quote unquote, women's fiction with strong romantic elements.
Which what does that even mean? Like, every time I see that, right? What does that mean, women's fiction with romantic elements?
Right. I mean, women's fiction obviously is just fiction with women in it, which seems like a crazy category to begin with. But I was trying to bring in these sort of Nora Ephron elements to it, but there was no category for that. I mean, you did not call a book a romantic comedy in 2007. That was only for movies. So it has really shifted. And it's so helpful because that really is what I write. So to be able to just call it a romantic comedy and sort of move on with everybody knowing what we're talking about has been super, super helpful for me.
I love that you're saying that because I think it is easier, like, the words actually the terms, the titles actually apply to your books now, right? But I wanna go back to this idea that you started about 19, 20 years ago, right? Your publishing career started, and books came out and people found out about them through newspapers, and now you're on Insta, there are all these social media, everything, right? And I find that readers want to get to know you as a personality as much as they want to know about your book. And that seems like a lot of pressure, right? Because people want to know, like, what are your earrings? And by the way, who's your main character, right? And like, what are you eating today? Or I don't know. There's this whole sort of a big wrap around the author now that didn't exist before. Can you talk about what that's like for you as a change?
That has been lovely. I've been on book tour for 3 weeks. I've been in a different city every night. I've been seeing people. And yeah, people want to know, like, where did you get your earrings? Like, where did you get your dress? Like, tell me all about it. But to me, that just makes it feel like I'm hanging out with friends. Like, as far as I am concerned, there has been no downside to any of that sort of personalizing. And I'm such a sort of goofball and just like a regular, ordinary, like not in any way intimidating person that it's more comfortable for me to do it that way. I would much rather feel like we're all just hanging out, talking about love stories. I don't need to like create some kind of literary distance for myself. So yeah, I like it.
If you're just joining us, I'm Rachel Barenbaum. You're listening to Check This Out on New Hampshire Public Radio, and we are talking to Katherine Center. She's a veteran author. She has an amazing new book out, The Shippers, and you are listening to the Book Biz segment, and we're talking to Katherine about the business of books. And right now, I want to move Katherine to the economics of publishing. So when you started 20 years ago, romance was very much a genre. Like you said, it was something you would buy when you were in the supermarket. You'd get the books, at your racks next to the checkout counter. But now romance is really the engine of publishing, right? That is where the money is. Let's talk about that from your perspective.
There is a reason that everybody is drawn to romance. It is nourishing. It's healing. It's uplifting. There is something about having that constitutionally guaranteed happily ever after waiting for you at the end of the story that allows you to sort of step into that story and to feel comforted.
What you just said was like this. I just had a huge light, like a, aha moment for me because that's right. I am willing to read a romance and go to the depths, the darkness, the sadness, right? Know the character is crying. I'm torn up, but I keep going because I know the happily ever after, or for now, as I say, is coming.
Yeah, it's like it actually allows you to explore some really dark things because we all know we're going to be okay in the end and better than okay. And that's what romance novels do for us.
If you're just joining us, I'm Rachel Barenbaum. You're listening to Check This Out, and we are talking to Katherine Center here in the Book Biz. Katherine, I want to talk about your books that you've published. You've had enormous success, like huge bestsellers, but like every author, not every book shoots straight up to the top right of the bestseller list. It can be heartbreaking when you put a book out that you absolutely love and it doesn't immediately sell a million copies. So let's talk about how you hang in through a career of 20 plus years when not every book is hitting the way you want it to hit.
That's a great question. So I have been the opposite of an overnight sensation. Yeah, my first novel came out in 2007, and I was totally hoping that as soon as it arrived in the world, that every single person in America would buy it. And, I would be swiftly escorted to Oprah's yacht and be hanging out there and become a household name and have everything I ever imagined success might look like. Instead, the book came out and a few people bought it. My mom bought a lot of copies. Um, and my process of getting to where I am now has been very, very slowly, reader by reader, book club by book club, library by library, finding my people, finding the people who were going to like the particular kind of bittersweet romantic comedy that I write. And it has been a very slow burn. And how do you stick with it? There were lots of disappointments early on. And by early on, I mean like the first 15 years. There were lots and lots of times when I thought I might never get a book contract, when I thought I might have to quit, or when I thought it just might be smarter to quit because, I'm like, I should go get a regular job and just, go to work and contribute to society, stop chasing this dream that I can't seem to catch. And yet, I loved writing stories so much that I just couldn't seem to make myself quit. And for a long time, it felt like a very tragic affliction that I had, but I just kept sticking with it. Whether I ever got to what I imagined success was going to be, I was going to be grateful that I got to do this with my life, that I got to spend my life thinking about stories, specifically love stories, and why they matter. But it's become this kind of practice that I have forced myself to do because I felt like that was the only way to stay steady with the way the ground shifts under your feet in publishing. I mean, there's no finish line. You're kind of only ever as good as your last book. And so I was like, this is how I'm going to be okay. I'm going to just be grateful for it all. I'm going to be grateful for everything. And yeah, I think that's been the trick to it because it has been a long time.
Katherine, here on the Book Biz, we talk about the business of the book, right? So you have the book, but it becomes an entire engine, a machine, because of course we get into adaptations, right? And audiobooks and all this other stuff. So tell us a little bit about your experience with making books into movies and how your dreams have grown around that.
I've been very lucky because two of my books have been turned into movies that are out there in the world. And both of those movies wound up hitting the top 10 on Netflix. One of my books, called The Lost Husband, got turned into a movie starring Josh Duhamel and Leslie Bibb in 2020. It was actually supposed to have a theatrical release in April of 2020, which you may recall was the month when all the movie theaters in America shut their doors for COVID. People found this movie and started watching it, and it wound up going to Netflix. Netflix heard about how it was selling like hotcakes, and then the very next day after they put it on Netflix, it shot to number one. Honestly, it really was, as all of my books are in some ways, a book about people bouncing back from hard things, right? And so there was something very heartwarming about it. There was something very hopeful about it. So it definitely resonated. And what I loved, just business wise, about that whole experience was both of those books came out earlier in my career when most people had not heard of me. And once those movies came out, and for Happiness for Beginners, once the trailer came out, the movie wasn't even out yet. All these people came back and started finding the book. And I was so grateful for that because it just basically gave this book a second chance to find its people. I do have one more book that's becoming a movie right now. It's a book I wrote called The Bodyguard, and it's going to star Jared Padalecki, who was on Gilmore Girls and on Supernatural for 17 seasons. And it's also gonna star Leighton Meester, from Gossip Girl. So that's coming out this year. It's a movie happening with Netflix, and, they haven't said the release date yet.
Katherine Center, your newest book, The Shippers, is just out. Again, I loved it. It was so much pure fun, just watching this couple fall in love, all of it. Tell us, what's the book about so everyone knows what we're talking about?
It's about a girl named JoJo who has to go on her sister's destination wedding cruise, and she has just had a massive romantic disappointment her own self. She's decided that she's imprinted on her first childhood kiss from when they were kids, and it just so happens that this guy, Finn Turner, is gonna be at the wedding on the boat. And just as the cruise is starting, JoJo's best childhood friend, this guy named Cooper Watts, she did not think was coming on this cruise, and he crashes the wedding. And JoJo forces Cooper to be her wingman while she pursues another guy. That's basically the setup of the story. Shenanigans ensue. There's a huge amount of banter. There's a huge amount of comedy. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that JoJo and Cooper wind up falling for each other. In romance, that's just something to look forward to.
But this is what I love about it, right? It's the happily ever after. I know before I start this book that that's going to happen, and I still want to read every single page.
Yeah, in romance, there should be surprises along the way, right? How you get there should be endlessly surprising and unexpected. The details of it all, the things people say to each other, the places they go, the situations they get into. But what is never in question in a romance novel is the ending. That nobody's trying to surprise you with that in a romance novel, And there's actually a psychological reason for this. It's because anticipation and surprise are opposite emotions. You cannot be surprised by something you're anticipating, and you cannot anticipate a surprise. And your number one job when you're writing a love story is to build a totally blissful feeling of anticipation for these two people to finally overcome all their internal and external obstacles and fall in love and get together. Like, that's your number one job. So I often see romance novels being called predictable because people will say, "Oh, I called it in the first chapter. I knew these two characters were going to get together." And it's like, yeah, you're supposed to know that. That is a gift that the romance writer is giving to you. You get 350 pages to blissfully anticipate the moment when these two knuckleheads figure it out. So that's how it's supposed to work. It's never about where you're going in a romance novel. You know where you're going. It's all about how you get there.
This takes us back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that security is what allows us to take that journey with your characters, right? Because I'm willing to go through all these crazy twists and turns, and I don't know what they're going to be. But because I know they're going to get together, I'm so happy to go there with you.
Yeah, you can relax. You can just relax. It's such a gift.
What is it that you think that people are attracted to? Why is this book, like you said, we know from page one they're going to get together, and we know it's this relaxing journey, but what is it about the twists and turns that you're writing that is pulling people in? What are they telling you they love so much about this book?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so I think I do romance in a particular way that might be kind of special to me, because it's built on a love story kind of shape. The roller coaster structure underneath the story is a rom-com structure. We are moving towards this happily ever after in a rom-com-y way. But I also make sure to go really, really deep with the characters. These are not cardboard cutout people. I try to make them real. I try to make them complicated. I try to make them messy. They're flawed. They're lovable. They're trying their best. But there's a lot of personal growth in the stories that I write. These characters start out at the beginning with ideas about themselves and who they need to be in the world that are not necessarily helping them or benefiting them. And part of what the plot is for in my stories is to just pummel them with opportunities to grow and change and re-examine a lot of their mistaken assumptions. So you have the bliss of the love story in one of my books, and that is fun, but you also have this added dimension of getting to know these people and having them really feel real. And then watching them grow and change, which I, as a reader, always find really, really satisfying. So I think that's a part of what I do that is appealing to people. And then the other thing I'll just add is my books are both funny and sad. I think that comedy and tragedy live shoulder to shoulder in life. I mean, I think that humans invented comedy because of tragedy and because we all just know how hard life is. And I think comedy is a coping mechanism, at least it is in my life. And so my books always have comedic situations and also a huge amount of banter. My characters are always joking around in all kinds of sort of wry, deadpan ways. So that's a part of it. And they also get into scrapes and shenanigans that are kind of rom-commy. So there's a lightness to it. But then there is also, like in the books, there are moments of genuine struggle and genuine grief. And there's real hardship that these characters have to face. And so I think there's something about the books that has gravitas in a way that maybe like your average everyday rom-com doesn't have. I want it to feel real. I want to care about these characters. I want there to be some stakes in the story. If it's too light, I kind of lose interest. I'm always looking for that balance between the lightness and the dark so that they kind of, define each other in just the right way.
You're out on book tour right now for this brand new book, The Shippers. You've done a bunch of book tours. Can you tell us a little bit about how readers have changed in the past 20 years of your career?
Oh, yeah. And when I first got started, first of all, I had a hard time getting to go on book tour because when I first started, it was broadly believed that I would not be able to draw a crowd, which was true. I mean, there were a number of times when I went to some setup event with a bookstore and there was literally no one there. And I think that's probably happened to every single writer at some point or another. It is brutal. Um, but I would say early on, this is true maybe in live situations like a book tour situation, and also maybe a little bit true, online, like on Goodreads and places where you're seeing reviews. People felt a little bit more reserved back in the beginning. And now what I see is just wild enthusiasm, so much excitement, people just there to have fun. And you know what? I'm not sure if that's that people have changed or just that they're finding my books in a different era, where fandoms are like a thing and people know how to get together with other people and just love what they love and just get excited about what they love and just celebrate. I mean, my book tours just feel like a massive slumber party. It's like all these fun people come out and we just laugh a lot and we talk about love and we talk about love stories. It's very joyful. And I found myself thinking about this quite a bit during the pandemic because I discovered this term during the pandemic that I hadn't known before, collective effervescence. And it's this idea that joy is good on its own, but it's so much better when you experience it with other people, like in a group. And that's why people love going to parties, and that's why people love going to concerts. People love to gather. It's because it amplifies that set of emotions that you get. And I find that on book tour. Like, you can read a book and have a great time, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to amplify your joy and you come to a book tour event, you're going to meet other people who also love the book. You're gonna talk about it, you're gonna laugh, you're gonna share things that you loved about it, you're gonna make friends, and when you laugh in a literal room full of other people, you laugh more, you laugh louder, it's more fun than if you're just laughing alone, listening to a podcast or something, and all laughing is good, but there's something really great about getting together, and I feel like the world knows that somehow in a new way, that in a way that it didn't maybe before the pandemic, that we're all just coming out and just wanting to be together.
Katherine Center, thank you so much for joining me today on Check This Out. I loved talking to you.
I loved being here. This was amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Rachel Barenbaum, author of the novels A Bend in the Stars and Atomic Anna. You've been listening to Check This Out, a show where I talk to other writers about their brand new books. Check This Out is a partnership between New Hampshire Public Radio and the Penn-Faulkner Foundation. Our producer is Jessica Hunt. NHPR's program director is Emily Quirk. Our partner, the Penn-Faulkner Foundation's mission, is to champion the breadth and power of fiction in America. This show is sponsored by C&S Wholesale Grocers Family of Companies, the podcast Totally Booked with Zibby and Zibby's Bookshop, and the Jack and Dorothy Byrne Foundation. Remember to go to your local library or bookstore and check out all the books we're talking about this season. Thanks for listening. Read on.